on your seatbelt. It's going to be a bumpy ride.
Chrissie is hilarious.
Chrissie, have you ever heard of the comedian Basha K. Ali?
No, that sounds like something you yell at before you blow up a plane.
30 seconds remaining.
But you know what, good thing to say, I dabbled in stand-up because I have no disrespect for you at all.
I was very confused by the title, Everything Everywhere All at Once, because that's also what we call it when Ash takes off his shirt. I shouldn't be up here. I should be in school on the other side of the ocean. Hello. Welcome to another episode of the Chrissie Mayr podcast. You can listen to this podcast on iTunes, YouTube, Spotify, SoundCloud, Rumble, Rockfin, Twitter, Twitch, Facebook even. Are people still using Facebook? No, they're not, Lila. Lila Hart is here in studio.
Hello.
She has been with me for several days. We did take your daughter to Compound Media Day on Monday. She was here for my baby shower on Sunday. She and I both presented an award at the Grifties on Saturday. You've been here since Thursday. It's been a jam-packed week.
Jam-packed week.
Getting it done. Doing all the things. So thank you guys for watching. We have a fabulous guest on tonight. Before I bring her on, I have a comedy show to promote. Guys, one more chance to see me very pregnant doing stand-up. This is your last chance, guys. This is it. Don't get scared now. Friday, March 22nd, 8:30, Granville, Pennsylvania, which is near Hershey, Pennsylvania, which is near Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. I'll be headlining the Laughing Stock Comedy Club for a fun. And then I'm going to give birth. Hopefully not on stage, but if I do, drinks are on me. If you're sitting in the front row and you get hit by my water breaking, I got you. Okay. I'll make it worth your while. All right. If there's a doctor in the house and you catch the baby, guess what? That's free comedy tickets. It's cheaper than doing it in the hospital, I think. So
Yes.
Come on out, March 22nd, Granville, Pennsylvania, Laughing Stock Comedy Club. This club is run by my good friends, Rich Carucci and Jeffrey Paul. So I'm excited to come perform at the club for the first time. It's gonna be great. Also, if you want to participate in the baby pool, okay, because it's soon. I'm gonna be 35 weeks pregnant on Friday. If you want to gamble on the birth, which I know you want to,
Yes, we do.
Venmo my good friend Gino Bisconti. He is trustworthy. Venmo him at Gino, GENOBISCONTE, $10 on Venmo. And then put the date, the weight, and the time. I think that will be the order of the gambling. Like if you get the date right, if several people get the date right, then they move on to the weight of the baby. And if several people get that right, then they'll move on to the time. And I think it's $5 to the baby, $5 to the winner.
Ooh.
So you could win $1 million.
Yes. And I'm saying April 8th, Eclipse Day.
Eclipse Day. You think the power of the moon is going to
suck the baby out.
Is going to suck it out. I'm very excited to be. I'm going to bring in my guest because we're going to keep talking about this. She's been on here before, so you may know her. But this may also be the first time that you are seeing her, and that's okay too, because she's going to update us on all her goings on. I love her because she's a fellow shadow banned person here on Twitter. Her latest film, Kidnap and Kill, an FBI terror plot, is coming out soon on her website, knkfilm.com. She's an independent journalist and the director and the producer of Kidnap and Kill. And it is a documentary about the Whitmer kidnapping plot. Please welcome to the show, Christina. And you may know her on Twitter as Radix Verum. Welcome, Christina.
Welcome.
Oh, I'm getting applause. Thank you.
You deserve the clap.
Aw,
You deserve
that is so sweet. Thank you. Yes, it's gonna be out. I don't want to give a hard time, so when we say soon, it's like let's be realistic. It'll get done when it gets done. It's in post-production now. I've made mistakes in the past by trying to like estimate when it's going to be done, and I vastly underestimated how long it would take to finish it. But it should be soon. I don't anticipate it being too long.
like more than 6 months from now?
Impossible to say because
More than a year?
no, not more than a year.
Okay. That's
It's
soon.
we have
In
to
the
break it
grand
up.
scheme of life, a year
Yeah.
is soon. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. And there's just so much material that you can't put it all in one. You have to figure out how you're going to break it up into a part 1, 2, and maybe 3. Which is a process, so it's a lot of
Yeah.
work.
It is what old people called a soft release. Thank you, Kamikaze. That's also what the women have called their experiences with you in the bedroom, Kamikaze. Oh, I need a sound effect.
Oh my goodness.
So
Oh,
let's
no.
pull this up, Christina. Let's pull this up because this has been like quite the challenge for you here.
Oh my gosh.
Social media platform X bans account promoting a forthcoming documentary about FBI's role in the Whitmer kidnapping plot. And there's a graphic here of our good friend Elon, who was supposed to solve all of our Twitter problems. He has not yet. He still could. With a tweet from you saying, "We are on day 2 of 0 answers regarding the censorship of our documentary film before it's even released by X, the so-called free speech site." So you haven't released this film yet. What indications were you starting to see that made you feel, "Oh God, we're already getting shadow banned here. We're already getting thwarted"?
Well, the weird thing about it is that the account we've had for over a year now, I mainly had it there just to promote the trailer for the documentary and to kind of give people little updates. So I hardly use that account. It's just waiting for the film to be released. So I thought it was really strange, but the timing of it was interesting because, mind you, I paid for that account. We paid every month to have this silly little blue check. And we also paid for the X ads to promote the trailer. And we actually had a lot of views on it. I had way more views on X than any other platform that we have it on, because I know we're really, really suppressed on YouTube where we have the trailer there. They allow us to be there, but you can't find it. Like if you search for Kidnap and Kill an FBI terror plot, you won't find it that way. You have to literally type in at YouTube at K&K Film Official to get it. And it's just really weird. But so our biggest presence, I guess, where we got the most views on the trailer was on X. So an interesting thing happened, which is that a publication called The Intercept, they're sort of like a more liberal, left-leaning publication. They just put out an expose on the Whitmer case, on one of the main architects of the plot, which was an FBI informant named Steve Robeson. You can see him there in the second video. You see his mugshots, 2 of them there. He's doing this big smile in one of them because he knows he's not going to get in trouble for anything he does. What that disgusting clown. But their expose is on him, and it's about how the Intercept got access to internal FBI files, and they got exclusive access to an interrogation of the FBI interrogating their own informant. That piece of crap. He is a pedo. Okay. And they used him as an informant to entrap a group of people who wouldn't have even met each other were it not for the FBI bringing them together and then hosting meetings and training exercises for them to meet each other.
Jesus.
So it was right after they dropped their expose on this that has like there's little audio clips where you can hear the FBI agents saying things like, we have a saying in my office, don't let the facts get in the way of a good story. And then they're saying to him, we've got the power, you know, because they're at that point, as they're interrogating him, they're raiding his home unbeknownst to him. You know, they're doing this under a pretext of a meeting, and they essentially talk about like how he entrapped all these people and how it looks really bad for them. And so the timing of it is right after that comes out, they take down the documentary Twitter account. And I was like, no, this is coordinated. And so I asked people to, hey, please tag Elon. I tagged him. I tagged X support, what's the CEO lady? The WEF lady, Linda.
Oh, Yaka. Is it Yaka? Linda Yakami?
I can never get the last name
Yakamino
right.
or something like that.
Something weird. We tagged her though, and I had so many people doing that it got to the point where it's like, we know someone has seen it, and we were not getting any answers. And the account said when it was suspended, I never got an email. There was nothing offensive there. There was nothing we had done. We just basically had the trailer there, and then I had some occasional posts I made going through like court documents, publicly available court documents. And so it's just like there was no reason for it to be censored. And it said that after a careful review of your account, we've determined you violated rules. No rules were violated. People tried to tell me that, oh, it was the algorithm or something like that because of the title of the documentary. But that's not true. You can say that word on there and not be, not get removed. When people are talking about tragic passings, they often use the K word without getting censored on there. It wasn't an algorithm. It wasn't a mistake. But that's what people kept trying to tell me, that, oh, maybe it was a mistake. And I was like, no, it seemed very deliberate, and there was no explanation. And they had no problem taking my money for over a year, and there was no problem with the title of the documentary. So that's not what it was. And we know from the Twitter files that the FBI they had a portal like at Twitter. They had people working there, like Elvis Chan.
Mike Baker, who was working, he was pretty high up there at Twitter, and he was former FBI.
Oh, I don't know, but there was somebody, I know there was somebody named Elvis Chan at the FBI.
Yep.
Yes. So it's like, we know that the FBI probably still has somebody there,
Jesus.
Pulling strings or
finger
something.
in every pot.
Yeah. So after 2 days of tons of, it was not just me on my own. There were some fairly large accounts who shared it because so many people were tagging them saying, you need to say something about this. They're preemptively censoring a documentary before it's been released, like at the timing of more information on this case coming out, So it just seemed very concerning. And it is very concerning. Still being suppressed. They have, after 2 days of us tagging them and having to do this massive response to just constantly drag them until they quietly restored it in the middle of the night after like 2 days with no explanation. And somebody that works at X just said, oh, it should be up or something. And like people were saying, well, why did you guys take it down? What happened? And just no answer, nothing.
Maybe you were mass reported, because the last time I was kind of given a timeout on Twitter, it was because of I think I was mass reported about my could it have been my Black National Anthem tweet? It was something where I know I was mass reported because it was like I didn't break any of the rules. It's just all of a sudden like I was in this timeout, and then a lot of people were tweeting it. All the accounts you're supposed to tweet at when this sort of thing happens. And I was supposed to have a 24-hour timeout, and I got let out in about half that time. So do you think you might have been maybe mass reported?
It's possible, but I doubt it, because I don't think that many people are aware of my tiny little documentary. And the Twitter account had like less than 1,000 people following it. I think I had 700. So it was, and like I hardly used it. It was not, I don't think it could be that. I'm not sure though. but it was definitely not going to be a temporary timeout. They said that it was permanently suspended and that I would not be able to make new accounts. I would not be able to get the account back. So I don't know. It is possible, though, that somebody just got really butthurt and thought, well, I don't want her to be able to talk about things, so let's mass flag her. I don't know, though, because I haven't really done anything.
But you know what? It's not like you
draw
it's
the
not even
ire
like
of
you
people.
pissed off a victim group, or you didn't pick up
Right.
you didn't piss off a protected class. This is more like this has to do with a politician. So
This
I
has
could
to
see
do with a
somebody
corrupt
higher.
agency. Yeah, and the other thing is,
Yeah.
if it was something that I did that offended people, well, it would have been my main Twitter account. It would have been my personal one because that's the one I use. I don't know why they would go for the documentary one. It just seemed like a targeted thing. I don't know, or the timing seemed interesting.
Oh, yes, it was because I said I said the Melanie Mac word. Thank you, Lance, for the reminder. Yeah, I think I said fag, tweeted fag or something. Was this the Intercept article you were referring to earlier?
No. It's a newer one. If you go to their Intercept website on their home, there it is. The FBI's double agent. That's what they called him, a double agent. He certainly wasn't. That's just what they said because they realized at a certain point that he was a liability for them, and they were not going to use many of the things that he did. Many of the recordings he obtained, they wanted to kind of keep him out of it, which is crazy because you're supposed to have the right to question and confront your accusers.
And this just seems like another setup to demonize anybody who's right of center, similar to January 6th.
Yes, of course. And the only issue I had with this Intercept article is the conclusions that they come to about how there isn't like weaponization against conservatives. And they also think that the idea that the FBI may have been involved in the Day of Infamy in January, they call that like a conspiracy theory. I don't know how you can conclude that after everything you report in here.
It's just easier to say that than to use any kind of critical thinking or piece together any of the evidence.
It's like you put in your article that they organized numerous plots, and then you ask the question, was it part of a broader FBI operation to stoke political unrest in the lead up to the 2020 election? And I'm going, yeah, like, how do you look at all of that and then not think that the other thing is connected or related? That blows my mind.
Wow. Even just this final sentence, the files suggest that federal agents have become reckless, turning a blind eye to public safety risks that, if addressed, could disrupt the government cases.
Well, I take issue with that too. The idea that any of these guys were like a public safety threat because they carried their arms, into the Capitol building. I disagree with some of the things in this article. But in any case, they often do those things because they're allowing, like Robeson, they allowed him while he was working for the FBI to sell drugs and run guns out of his home. While he's a felon, by the way, and a child predator.
Jeez. Yes, a
career
child
criminal.
Enthusiast.
Yeah. Of course, they're their favorite kind of person because somebody like that is easy to control, right? Of course they'd want somebody like that.
What you just said, Robeson's career as a government cooperator appears to have coincided with his career as a criminal. In 1985, he testified as a member of a violent motorcycle gang with whom he had shared a jail cell, confessed him that he had hit a girl on the top of the head before her body was found in a burned out.
I actually wonder if that jailhouse confession ever actually occurred. Like it's Robeson's word for it. I wonder if somebody's not serving like a manslaughter or homicide deal for something Roby lied about, because the man's a pathological liar and predator.
Jeez. Yeah. It's
he did yeah, you guys will see in the documentary, you'll hear about him, and you'll get to hear directly from the people who met him, were involved with him, during 2020. You'll get to hear about what he was doing.
Let's see. Is there on your YouTube page a little bit of a teaser I could play just for people who are not familiar?
If we could play so if go to the YouTube for the documentary, we've got the trailer. You have to scroll more because I put some updated stuff there. You could play that. And there's also, I have a statement from Joe Morrison to the Weaponization Committee, which I thought was, it's good to hear from somebody who's like literally in prison for something they didn't do.
Ooh, okay. Let me play this one first. And who is Joe Morrison?
He was the original founder of the Wolverine Watchman group, which is the group that the FBI infiltrated and turned into like a militia group. They were like an online prepping group. So he's the young man. He's got 2 young kids and a wife. They rolled him up for providing material support to the FBI's plot.
Jesus. Okay.
My name is Joseph Morrison. I was entrapped, framed, slandered, defamed, and falsely convicted and imprisoned because of the weaponization of the DOJ, particularly the FBI. My constitutional rights were violated and used against me. Instead of investigating and following evidence, the FBI in my case, through CHS Dan Chappelle, at the guidance of Special Agents Henrik Impala and Jason Chambers, created and manufactured a plot to kidnap Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer. Dan Chappelle led all combat training and even paid for people to go to training at other CHS Steve Robeson's property in Wisconsin, who otherwise would not be able to attend. Without Dan Chappelle and the FBI, no plot would have ever happened, nor would have most parties.
This call is from a federal prison.
Please do the research into this case and see the facts, all the facts. Unseal all documents in this case, especially the text messages between Dan and his handling agents. Show the totality of the corruption to the American people. Don't just use this as a prop to appease your base or get votes. We are hurting. Our families are hurting. My wife, my children are hurting. My mother-in-law is hurting. Myself and these other men do not belong in prison. We belong at home, raising our children, loving our wives, helping our communities, working our jobs. You have the power and opportunity to right an injustice, to show the American people that the Constitution still matters, and that the FBI can't operate as the Stasi of East Germany, targeting and entrapping political opponents. You have the opportunity to go down in history as those who stand against the tide of injustice, to stand firmly for truth, liberty, and justice. All it takes for evil to prevail is for the good to be silent. So I earnestly ask you to do not be silent to this evil. If you are, history will remember you as cowards. Strong and courageous, may God grant you the wisdom and courage to stand for justice.
So he just, I guess he left you these voicemails, or that was one.
That's a phone call we did while he was in prison. I wanted him to, if he could get a statement to the Weaponization Committee, I wanted to record it for him and then try to get it to the committee, which I've tried to do. I don't know if they've got it. The Weaponization Committee doesn't seem to be interested in really holding the government accountable for weaponization. But I at least wanted to record it and try, to help these guys.
And how long was he serving?
He could be in prison until 2063. He was never charged federally, but they have him in a federal prison in Illinois. He is from Michigan. Why is he out of state? He was not charged federally. Why is he in federal facility? We never got answers for that. He's currently appealing right now in Michigan, but who is the head of the Michigan Department of Corrections? It's Gretchen Whitmer. So the victim in his case. And she doesn't like these guys. I mean, she gave a 3-minute long victim impact statement at their sentencing where she lied and said that she felt like she was in danger and all this crazy stuff, and how she looks into the crowd everywhere she goes. And, meanwhile, she was aware of this the entire time. She was never in danger. The FBI was always coordinating with her security detail. It's ridiculous. In fact, that picture, the infamous picture of the watchmen armed inside the Capitol in Lansing, where they're lined up against the wall, she's in the room behind them. Like, if they wanted to get her, she was in the Capitol building. The FBI told the Lansing Capitol Police to stand down and let everybody in. And so that's how that happened. So the whole thing is just ridiculous.
Let's see. I'm trying to figure out. Was it the black and white photo?
It is. So if you go to the trailer of the documentary, it's in there. I know I have it in there. I'll show it. I'll tell you which one it is. You guys will recognize it. You'll recognize it from when it happened, because it was kind of a big thing. They were trying to portray. Yeah, you see it right there in the trailer. Okay. They tried to portray it as them kind of storming the building there in Lansing, which is not what happened.
Oh, Jesus. All right, I'm going to play this. This is the teaser.
Earlier today, Attorney General Dana Nessel was joined by officials from the Department of Justice and the FBI to announce state and federal charges against 13 members of 2 militia groups.
This picture right here.
To kidnap and possibly kill me.
That picture.
We're grateful to the FBI and law enforcement.
Is it this one?
And stopped them.
No, it was further back. Them standing right.
Grateful.
Oh, them with their guns.
Right there. Yeah, that was them. So she was right there in the room behind them. This was at an anti-lockdown event, or a pro 2A rally or whatever in April of 2020. They all went inside because the FBI told the Lansing Capitol Police to open the doors and let them all in. And they just kind of went inside. They stood in line for an hour. They went through COVID screening, and then they just kind of occupied the building. But the one of the informants was there, of course. The FBI was monitoring this whole thing. And then the media took these pictures of the watchmen. So standing up against that wall, you've got Joe Morrison in the middle, square in the middle in the red plaid. Next to him is Paul Beller. And then all the way to the right is Pete Musica, which is Joe Morrison's father-in-law, the other original founder of the Wolverine Watchmen. They're there. So the media gets these pictures of them and then posts it in the New York Times saying these people stormed the building, basically. And then the Watchmen were like, oh, wow, we're getting all this media attention. The FBI was using the media to recruit people into their militia group. Because at this point, Dan Chappell's the executive officer of the group.
Wow.
And so just know Whitmer's in the building. She's in the building.
This group photo.
Yeah. Right. But this was a big, scary event, apparently. And this is what they're talking about, by the way, when they say that in that Intercept article that the FBI endangered the public to keep the hoax going. They're talking about things like this, where they allowed this to happen. They specifically wanted it to happen and told them to let it happen. So the FBI, what that actually tells you is not that they were endangering the public. I mean, you could make that argument, but really what it suggests is that they didn't think these men were a threat. They kind of knew that they were dealing with a bunch of goofballs that weren't really going to do anything. I think it just really shows that.
But they take advantage of the optics of how this photo looks and the masks and for people that are just simply scared at the sight of a gun.
An interesting thing to note about this, too, is that some of the guys who were wrapped up in this for, get hit with state charges for providing material support, they actually worked as security in the Capitol before. They came in, carrying, they would be there at events going back years. So they actually used this to pass a law that now you can't carry anymore in the Capitol buildings in Michigan, which is a right these people used to enjoy and always enjoyed peacefully. But they use this event to say, oh, no, we can't have that now. We've got to take those rights away from the American people. And this is literally they made it up. And it's so disgusting.
It just sounds like a mini January 6th. Yeah, it just sounds like a
It was a
A
trial
mission
run.
specific. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was a trial run. All right, I'm going to play the rest of this.
Kidnap and possibly kill me.
We're grateful to the FBI and law enforcement who discovered these domestic terrorists and stopped them. You know, it's the sort of behavior you might expect from ISIS.
You might see a number that high in a sprawling narcotics conspiracy that stretches from coast to coast and beyond. That's a pretty high number in a case like this. It really reflects, I think, how deeply the government has been diving into this investigation to try to make these cases.
It was just literally a bunch of working class guys who on the weekend got together and, exercised their rights and trained with firearms. So the FBI says, hey, we'll just pay for everything.
And the worst decision this guy made was to put in the ear spacers in his earlobes.
Oh, Brandon.
He's guilty of anything. It's that bad decision. They don't just snap back, guys.
Pay for everything.
Who arranged the meeting? The FBI's paid provocateur. Robeson was getting paid to set this stuff up.
So they make the route, they set the locations, they make the plan, they do everything. And Adam's literally just sitting in the basement of a vacuum repair shop smoking blunts all day.
You're going to hear that my client was the leader of this group. But I think you're also going to hear that there was an election held to identify the leader, and it was Dan.
How can I frame this social situation to make this naive person appear to be a dangerous, violent terrorist? The whole goal was for the FBI to spend millions of dollars to create militia groups, record them saying offensive stuff, and then frame them in a fake conspiracy.
The left is so desperate to make it look like their politicians or their people are the real victims. Meanwhile, what did they spend the whole summer of love and before doing? Saying, "Oh, you need to get in the street. You need to make these Republican politicians. You need to make them feel uncomfortable." Wasn't some guy attacked at a softball game? But they literally will go to these extreme lengths to make it look like the leftist politicians are the ones that really are victims and getting kidnapped, and Pelosi, the whole, my God, her basically one woman show of oh my God, AOC lying about, being traumatized from January 6th. She wasn't even in the building.
She lied oh my God, she wasn't even where she claimed she was.
Yeah, we infiltrated a LARPing group, basically. Yeah. Very. You guys are proud of yourselves.
Yeah, I mean, they act like their informant Dan was telling Adam, the guy they framed as the ringleader. Poor Adam, he's just he's very childlike and naive and just very trusting. And Dan would tell him, so Dan was an Iraq war veteran. That part is true. But he told Adam he was part of the elite unit that rescued Chris Kyle. And he built himself up as this operator. And he would tell Adam that, in the military, when we wanted to train guys, you got to give them a mission to focus on, so when we talk about stuff, it's just it's not real, it's just, but this is what, you do in the military to get people focused. You have a goal, right? You're training with a purpose. He'd say things like this, and it's just so dishonest and so disgusting.
Wow. So who are the people that are currently serving time for this right now?
Adam Fox, the so-called ringleader. He's in Florence Supermax. He should not be there. This is somebody who had no criminal record. He's never and he's very, like I said, he's a very gentle person. He just he's not, he has anxiety. He struggles with anxiety and depression. He's in a cell 23 hours a day in isolation. It's horrible, and he doesn't deserve it. Barry Croft is the truck driver, the 50-year-old truck driver from Delaware, father of 3, who is also now at Florence Supermax, serving a 20-year sentence, which is absurd and ridiculous. And then Joe Morrison, who we listened to, he's in Pekin, Illinois right now. He could be in there until 2063 for state charges of, quote, providing material support. They also decided that the Wolverine Watchmen is a gang. So they hit them with gang charges. They gave them terror enhancements. And Michigan has very unique anti-terror laws that were passed in the wake of 9/11 that are about, quote, aiding and abetting. And that's how they were able to get them for, quote, providing material support, which is that for Joe and Pete, they allowed the FBI to use their property for the FBI's training. And so that's how they apparently lent material support to a plot that doesn't exist and didn't happen, except for in the minds of the FBI, literally. So Joe Morrison, he is maybe just turning 30 now. Pete is in his 40s. Pete is Joe's father-in-law. So Jada lost her husband and her father. They arrested them both. Her mom, who never really had to be a breadwinner. I mean, she worked, but the men were the breadwinners. She now has to support not just her family, but her grandkids now, Joe's kids. It's insane. And then they also have the additional financial burden of dealing with every prison phone call is $5 for a 15-minute phone call. Yeah, it's crazy. $12 if you want to buy them a tube of toothpaste in there. Just crazy stuff. It's awful. Paul Beller just turned 25 in prison. He did literally nothing. He actually moved away. He was a member, so-called, of the Watchmen, which literally was a prepping group at the time, and he provided medical training. He taught somebody how to tie a tourniquet. So that's how apparently he aided and abetted the FBI's plot.
He's in jail for that?
He's in jail until possibly 2063. And he's telling me, because we communicate, he's explaining what it's like to turn 25 in prison, and you're there and you don't know why you're there. He left the state of Michigan in July of 2020. Now, he moved to South Carolina. He lived in a different state. The FBI has admitted and testified under oath at the federal and state trial there was no, quote, plot until at least August or September of 2020. But they admit he moved away in July. How is he even in prison? There's nothing he did where he broke a law. Literally nothing. He just happened to be at a place at a certain time that the FBI set up while this stuff was going on. And it's horrible. This is a kid, by the way, who, when he was 14 years old, joined the Milford Fire Department. He was going on first responding calls as a teenager while he was in school. He enlisted when he was 17. So he's a veteran. This is they do this to our best people. It's horrible. So Adam Fox, Barry Croft, Joe Morrison, Paul Beller, Pete Musico. Those are the 5 still incarcerated, currently appealing, and it's been a nightmare trying to even deal with the appeals.
And you've been in contact with all of them?
Yeah.
Basically,
yes.
Wow. How was that process like, getting in touch with everyone? I had a prison pen pal briefly a few years ago, but he reached out to me out of nowhere and then ultimately started asking me about how I got into stand-up, which really turned me off. I was like, I think we're done here, pen pal. Also, my therapist at the time said, you should really be careful with these prison pen pals because when they get out, the first person they kill is their pen pal and the pen pal's boyfriend. So I was like,
oh my gosh.
I was like, all right, Jermaine, this is where we go our separate ways.
Oh,
man. It really bothered me when he was like, so how did you get into stand-up? I was like, wow. Yeah, that's it. We're done.
Aw. It's been an interesting process. So for Adam and Barry, I was talking to them and interviewing them while they were in prison before they'd even been sentenced. So this was at the first federal trial that ended in 0 convictions for the government. 2 men were acquitted, Daniel Harris, Brandon Caserta. There was a mistrial on Adam and Barry. The government decided to retry Adam and Barry in what amounted to nothing more than a kangaroo court, where they literally picked the jury. And they had somebody on there who was overheard saying, before any of this happened, I'm going to hang these guys, All kinds of crazy stuff ensued, which is this is why it's going to be appealed at the 6th Circuit. But I'd been interviewing them at Nuevo County, doing interviews for the documentary before their sentencing. And I got statements from Adam and Barry for the weaponization committee. The night before Barry's sentencing, I asked him if he wanted to give a message to the American people before his sentencing so he could have a voice. I put out like a little video the night before his sentencing. The next morning, the prosecutor, Nils Kessler, is quoting from my interview saying that this is evidence that, number one, Barry is unrepentant and completely radicalized because he was still claiming that he was innocent, because lo and behold, he is. And they don't like that, though. And then he called me like a YouTuber. He wouldn't even say I was a journalist. And then he used that to bring up this idea, this notion that Barry was the spiritual leader of this non-existent plot. He likened him to the blind sheik. Like Barry's some guy in a cave, like leading a religious movement or something. Nobody ever heard spiritual leader of a quote kidnapping conspiracy. What does that even mean?
Men are not into that stuff. This the second you mention anything spiritual around a bunch of dudes, they're like, that's gay. So I don't believe this for a moment.
No, it was just like they didn't like that Barry was participating in the documentary. And so this is what they did. And then immediately, so right after their sentencing is when I got statements for them for weaponization committee. And the day after, right after I published Barry's, like I published it at late at night. The next morning, him and Adam were moved to Supermax facilities across the country. They sent Adam to Florence, and they initially sent Barry to Terre Haute, which, ended their participation in the documentary. So it was very difficult to maintain communication with them after that. My communication with Barry, per the Bureau of Prisons, is limited because I am in communication with the other guys. So all of my communications are being monitored by the government, by the FBI, by the Bureau of Prisons. Yeah, everything. And then for the state guys, they monitor everything as well. And it's just been a crazy process trying to navigate that.
So because you're being monitored, does that at all change like what you say? I don't know. You still have to do your best and get the information you need.
Yeah. No, I know I'm not stupid, so I assume that. I just like what I talk to them about mainly is like God. I try to, keep their hopes up and encourage them. And I basically try to help them with the legal stuff, things that they need. I send them books, I make sure that they're getting letters, and I made sure they didn't have access to a Michigan law library because, they're trying to participate in their appeals. And like I said, on the eve of their appeals, Whitmer's MDOC moves them from, these are men not charged federally. We're talking about the 3 state guys. On the eve of their appeals, she sends them to these federal facilities across the country. So their lawyers now who are in Michigan, if they want to meet with them, they've got to go to Illinois or Pennsylvania or West Virginia. And they're not going to do it. They're court-appointed lawyers. Court-appointed lawyers don't care. They're not making the 5-hour drive to go see you in person. They're not facilitating phone calls. When they do, according to these appeals lawyers in their court filings, their attorney-client privilege phone calls are being monitored by a third party. We all know who the third party is, which tells us that the BOP is allowing the FBI to monitor privileged attorney-client phone calls. They were also, the Bureau of Prisons is not allowing them to get their legal mail at times. Legal mail, like their transcripts they need to prepare for their appeals, were being sent back, return to sender to their lawyers. And we have proof of this in court filings. So they just made this a nightmare. So I got them like Michigan law books, and I sent them to their prisons because no one else is going to do it. Their lawyers didn't even send them law books to help them. So I do things like that, basically. I'm not worried about the government seeing that I'm, following the law and things like this and trying to help with their case. Like, I'm allowed to do that. It's actually inappropriate and improper for them to be spying on communications between a journalist and it doesn't matter though. Like they're obviously doing that to their lawyer, so why wouldn't they do it to us?
Would you send them law books, but like cover it in like a Playboy magazine cover, or like tape some sort of like Christina's nudes and then like cover that over the law book so that they wouldn't suspect?
So they don't know that we're helping with their case. No, you can't even send anything to them directly. So if you want to send them a law book, you've got to you have to purchase it from a third party publisher, and then the publisher has to send it to the prison.
Wow. I almost feel like, I mean, this is horrible, but I feel like prison is a great opportunity to get a lot of reading done because there's no distractions. No
Yeah,
job.
right.
No.
Yeah, you got like 3 books. You read the same books. Unless you have somebody that's, if you're one of the lucky few who has somebody on the outside that is willing to send you new books all the time. One of the things that I think it helps them to make friends in there. If you have interesting books, sometimes people want to come and see what you've got. So you can help them out that way by just sending them books. That sometimes that helps them.
They're trading.
But it's scary though, because one of the things that's happening with the BOP facilities, number one, so I attended the BOP oversight hearing, the first oversight hearing they had, which is the first one they've had in a long time, because there's no real like oversight of the Bureau of Prisons. They do what they want and nobody cares. No one knows and is paying attention. And in many of these prisons, like the inmates run the asylum, or there's just a lot of corruption, So I attended the BOP oversight hearing. I did meet the director, Colette Peters, briefly in the hallway. The first time they had a recent one, again, another one about the deaths that are happening at these facilities. People are just dying, and because they're so bad, and the buildings are like dilapidated. They had to shut down one of the prisons in Atlanta because it was just so. They're like decaying, like the infrastructure is falling apart. They're terribly understaffed, and the people that they do have are people who tend to be like sadistic. They're willing to work for next to no money. They tend to, because she said at this hearing, the director of the Bureau of Prisons, that they can't compete with what the state can pay people. So for law enforcement, so they have to offer. They have lower things to offer. So the people that you end up getting are like the lower quality people who will take less money. And it's just completely corrupt. There was there was a big investigation in California in a women's prison, horrible things happening to these women, an R gang, basically. So these female inmates are being assaulted by prison staff. And like, they control everything. So they can control, if you're trying to send letters to people, they can monitor it. They can withhold mail. Like they've done that to me. And these guys, I know, because I scan everything now. That's something I had to learn to start doing because they just weren't getting my letters. And then they thought I wasn't writing to them. It's just crazy.
And you weren't even asking them about stand-up comedy, so there's no reason for them to not get back to you. Torgo the White, Queen Radix, ooh woo, unbreaded. Thank you, Torgo. I haven't heard anybody say unbreaded in a while. Clint Torres, thanks for the super chat. Howdy, ladies. Howdy, Clint. Anthony. So, Radix, what got you into journalism?
Oh, that's a good question. I don't know. I used to be a paralegal, and I just, I don't know. I like doing my own thing. And I like, I think I like looking into things where I think things, number one, that are underreported or undercovered, or I like looking into things where I think that the media has gotten it wrong. And so I think mainly it's just like having a strong sense of justice.
Are you a Libra?
No, Virgo.
Ooh.
Oh, yes. Virgos love this. I'm serious. They love investigative journalism.
They love to go deep.
Yes. This makes perfect sense now.
Mm-hmm.
That's true.
Well, as our local
curious.
Grifty, thanks for the super chat. Radix's coverage of the Whitmer frame job has been amazing.
Aww,
thanks for having her on. Also, Frank can take the pen pal. I got faith. I don't know. He had a lot of tattoos on him. I asked him what he was in for, and he said car stuff. And then I looked up his name, and he had like stolen a bunch of cars. It was more than just car stuff. Jermaine was not totally upfront
How
with
did he
me.
find you?
That is something that I will probably die not knowing the answer to. All of a sudden, I got an email one day. This had to have been like 2018 because I talked about the first couple times I went on Compound Media. I got an email from something called Core Links, which is
that's what it is.
a prison email server. And I just said somebody from whatever jail or whatever
That's so
penitentiary
funny.
wants to talk to you. I pressed accept. I was like, what? Okay. And we just went back and forth for, I guess, a couple months because I was just totally intrigued by this. I'm like, how did this person find me?
How long were
That's
these
so
emails?
funny.
How long were the emails? A couple paragraphs.
You just want to know about you?
Yeah, and it wasn't like, obviously if it were flirty, I'd been like, all right, bye. But it was like, hey, it was just like a pen pal.
Like friendship.
Yeah. I should have offered to buy him some $12 toothpaste.
Yeah, right?
So
Or
wait,
some
you
ramen noodles.
can't brush your teeth unless you pay $12 for toothpaste?
Unless you want to have whatever crap they're given that is, if you want to have Colgate, you know. And the stupidest thing about this is like you could not just go to Costco and buy it and just send it to your family member, that you have to purchase it through their stupid system with their stupid prices. Same for getting them like boots and blankets and stuff. Like everything has to go through their stupid nonsense.
So were you using Core Links or you just heard of it?
No, I use that to talk to the state guys.
Wow. I wonder if they know Jermaine.
It's possible. You know, one of the guys, he met a J6er in there. He had a young guy in there, Pete Musico. And apparently that guy's out now. And he said that Pete helped get him through his time in there. So I think that it's interesting because I feel like they have certain places where they send their so-called political prisoners. And it makes sense to me that some of those guys would end up with the Michigan guys who are not in Michigan.
I wonder if the political prisoners are all fighting over like, no, we're watching Newsmax. No, we're watching Fox. No, we're watching OAN. Like they fight over the TV. Although the prisons probably don't have those subscriptions.
No.
I don't know if they would well,
Daily Wire.
They must have, I guess they get Fox then, because Barry sometimes writes to me where he references stuff that he saw on the news. Like he was talking about the Carrie Lake recording, and I'm like, how the hell does Barry in Florence know about this? He's in Supermax.
My friend Gary Beekler, I think he said when he was in jail for a minute, they would watch Cops all the time.
Really?
Like
oh my gosh. That has to be sort of like a sadistic thing to subject yourself to. If you're in prison to watch other people get arrested, it's got to be like re-traumatizing yourself.
But it's their reality. It's like they're Real Housewives. It's like they're Keeping Up with the Kardashians. It's like, oh, they're just like us. They eat big salads. Yes, exactly, Erica. Bad boys, bad boys. What you gonna do? What you gonna do when they come for you? You're gonna get $12 toothpaste.
Gonna get framed by the FBI.
Gonna end up.
The Squid. Thank you, The Squid. God bless you for helping these men fight the feds, clear entrapment plot. Also, never join a militia. There's always feds there, or the group is on a government watch list. What if it's a gay militia? What if it's a trans militia?
Oh my God, those are real. It's called Antifa.
Really?
It's called Antifa. I mean, they're mostly.
I think a gay militia, a good name for a gay militia would be Don't Ask, Don't Tell.
Yeah. Oh my goodness.
Oh my God. No, but you're right, Squid.
But where are they anymore? Like, do militias even exist, or have they all been scared into hiding because of things like the Whitmer hoax? And I would also suggest that many of them were long infiltrated. I mean, my gosh, just look at what we learned about the Proud Boys and how many informants were in there. I mean, out of their leadership chat, 8 out of 13 people were working for the government. That's insane.
Yeah, especially because I personally know Gavin McGinnis, who's the supposed founder of it, and he's told the story
Right.
a million times. It was started as a social group for a guy who like needed help getting laid, and they were like, "You gotta wear a leather jacket, you gotta work out, you gotta stop jerking off." And then you fast forward, and it's like how the Proud Boys have
Here we go.
painted. Yeah, they were like, "You
Yeah,
gotta
and
stop
then
jerking off,
the
buddy." That was the whole
FBI
group.
gets involved, and there you go, and then things change real fast.
Yeah.
But this is what they do, though, and they have like an operational like plan in place. Like they have these, they're using like counter-terror tactics on Americans. This is like war on terror type things, what they're doing. It's like Gladio. They have a blueprint for it, we'll just say, and they've been doing it for a long time. This isn't actually anything new. I think what's new about it is the scope of it and the audaciousness of it. Like, oh yeah, we're gonna do a fake, we're gonna pretend to kidnap a sitting governor. That's insane. And it wasn't just her. They wanted it to be a multi-state plot. This is further confirmed in the Intercept article where they talk about what they did to Frank Butler, the veteran, the 60 or 70-year-old veteran from Virginia who they tried to get to kidnap and kill Ralph Northam. They apparently, their informant, the pedo Roby, was willing to lend a drone, and he had this whole idea where he wanted this elderly man to lead a QRF, that's a quick reaction force, a contingent of men, where she told Frank he was going to have his own army and that they were going to launch an assault on Ralph Northam's North Carolina vacation home. So this was all part of the FBI plot. There was a BLM activist that they tried to get to assassinate the attorney general in Colorado. So it just goes on. And like none of these agents, nothing has happened to them. They haven't, the only one that got reprimanded was Richard Trask, but that was because he beat his wife after they attended a swingers party and he tried to kill her.
That's the first rule of swinger parties. Never beat your wife after it's over. Just be happy she let you go.
I was like, this is how the FBI celebrates getting a big arrest in like a big DT case. They're like, oh, okay, so we all bring our wives to a swingers party in Kalamazoo at a hotel and then do what exactly? Who's videotape? Was someone videotaping this? What was going on here? Like, is this some kind of bizarre initiation ritual for Richard Trask? Why did he try to strangle his wife and bash her head against the nightstand that night? I guess we'll never know the full story there. But for that, he spent one night in jail and paid a $950 fine.
That's it.
Jeez.
That's it.
Clint Torres, thanks for the super chat. I love all my Virgo girlfriends. You don't even have to ask them to clean the house. Aha! Is that true, Christina? Are you a cleaner?
Yeah. Yeah, totally organized and clean everything.
Yeah, super clean. All right.
Mm-hmm.
That's all right. I'm not clean either. Holy cow. All right, I was going to get back to this X article here. Although maybe we did mostly cover it about the ban. Yeah, it is disappointing because like you were saying earlier before we went live, Christina, like just I think Elon is a net positive as far as Twitter goes, but yeah, he did promise to unban all of the accounts that were banned. Totally. We still deal with shadow banning. We still deal with stifling of reach.
Yeah, and something has changed or broken there. I don't know if you've noticed it, but the following tab or the For You tab has changed. Like there's their following one, which is just people you follow, and then there's the supposed For You one where you're supposed to be able to like I don't know, like see other people, not just people you follow. And something has happened with that because there's people that I know I follow that I just don't see anymore. that I'm like, I know, that I had like these certain people I followed that I just like, you lose track of them though. You can't keep track of everybody, but you notice all of a sudden that like, wait a second, something's different, and that is, I think that's really scary because it just happens quietly and like you don't notice what's happening.
Yep. Wow. How much were you paying in ads to promote this film?
I don't know how much it ended up being. We ran ads for several times. We ran ads for several days. So probably maybe a couple $100. It wasn't a lot, that's for sure.
Wow.
But still, it doesn't matter. It's like you pay to be censored. I don't think so.
Yeah, no.
I think not.
I'm like old Twitter.
Yeah, and it's not just me. So when I made the first post talking about what happened, I had other people reach out and say their documentaries are also like their documentary accounts also had recently been censored or like suspended. There was one person they have a J6 documentary called like J6 the Timeline or it's something like that, and they said that this happened to them as well. So it seems like, I don't know, that maybe certain types of things that maybe would not be considered like advertiser friendly are being like, they're seeing maybe if they can quietly remove that. I'm not sure, but I think it's kind of weird that multiple like independent documentary film things are being taken down. And I don't think you can explain the algorithm because again, you just look at other people and other things and you're going, well, that's up there and that didn't get hit by an algorithm or whatever. I don't think that's what it is. I think there's something suspicious afoot.
Specifically targeted. Lila, did you find that was the case with your experience putting out documentaries?
Well, we did put them out. Our documentaries were free on YouTube, but our latest documentary, the Fauci film, Eric, my husband, just put the whole thing directly on Twitter. But his account was suspended for almost a year before he even got it back.
Does he know what he was suspended for?
No.
Of course.
Yeah, there was no reason. And then one day it was back.
So he didn't suspect it was like a specific tweet?
Oh, no, it was when we were on Alex Jones. And then we got like we got an account with Alex Jones and he shared the link to our documentary from InfoWars.
Huh. Wow.
So I don't know. I just think that Twitter, like they pick and choose, and then you go on Twitter and see like videos of decapitating people and all sorts of things, but then you actually paid for advertisement for your film and it gets wiped out. It makes no sense.
Yeah, and oh my gosh, and the porn bots too, pussy in bio, like
I know, and but then I see like my friends writing that, and I'm like,
what are they writing?
Pussy in bio. I haven't seen that. It's a trend. Maybe you don't have as many porn bots on your thread.
Oh my goodness,
that is funny.
And they'll have like squares in between each letter.
Yeah. Well, but you can't talk about government corruption.
How long have these men been locked up?
So right now, it's been almost 4 years.
Oh my God.
Right, since October of 2020. Yeah, October 2020.
What crime was actually committed?
None. Literally none. So they charged 6 men federally with conspiring to kidnap Whitmer. Conspiring. And then they added a superseding indictment charging some of those men with WMDs because they claimed they made an IED because Barry taped pennies to a firework that he legally bought at a fireworks store. They even talked about it being the presidential one, and he taped pennies on it to try to turn it into a flashbang, but he detonated it in a tree. So earlier at the FTX, they had been doing target practice, so they had like these silhouette targets hanging, but because he tied it to the tree and detonated it there, they said that he was using the pennies as shrapnel or something, which is not what he was doing. But anyways, this is what they're charging them with, like, WMDs for. And like, they tried to, the guys were like, they were stoned and drunk half the time, so they tried to blow up an oven at one point, and they were saying that like this was, oh, they were playing with explosives, or it's like, oh my gosh, no, nothing really, no real crime was committed except by the government, because they were giving these guys like marijuana by the ounce, and then they were telling them, they were trying to get them to like, so one of them had a 501c3 charity, and they were pushing these credit cards on them, like $5,000 credit cards, because they were trying to get them to make purchases of like ammunition or weapons or something. So they tried to get them to do stuff. I would say maybe Caleb Franks, one of the guys, got caught up in like a ghost gun thing with Dan Chappell, the informant. So there was that, but there's no real, like, nothing happens without the FBI. There was no actual plan to get Whitmer except by the FBI and their network of informants and agents who provoked and instigated it and organized the whole thing. And then 8 guys were charged with providing material support, gang affiliation, and felony firearms, because they were legally carrying their guns at these meetings and events that the FBI set up, where they claimed that there was a terrorist training camp happening, which was ridiculous. So nothing actually happened. The only person who committed an act of violence was one of the lead handling agents, Richard Trask, who, beat his wife.
And he only spent one night in jail and paid a $900 fine. Meanwhile, these guys are in there for 4 years for just conspiring. And it's like, okay, that's just crazy to me, because it's like, you can't even make jokes. What if they're just joking around?
Right.
They
Like,
were at one. They
person.
would get them drunk and stoned, and they'd kind of like hang out at these FTXs and then just all talk. Like, you've got groups of guys, in militia. So they're into like firearms culture and meme culture and stuff. They were posting like memes. The memes was a big part of their trial. All kinds of just crazy stuff. And they talked about things like, Adam said he wanted to fly her over the lake on a kite. Whitmer.
On a kite?
Like he was gonna fly her over. Yeah, Adam said he wanted to fly her over the lake on a kite.
Yeah, because
this is the kind of stuff.
Yeah,
this is the kind of stuff they were saying. Or like, one of the guys, Sean Fix, was pretending to be a Navy SEAL, and he was telling people that they could get like Blackhawks and Hueys, and so they were gonna, I guess, they're gonna get a helicopter, then they were gonna nab her, and then I guess they were gonna somehow like get her from one helicopter into the other helicopter. It just is like nonsense talk. They talked about taking down like satellites, just like, this is nonsense talk, the kind of things that guys do when they're, I guess, drunk and stoned, and then the FBI is asking them hypotheticals, like, hypothetically speaking, when would it be okay to use violence, or it would use people being upset about the lockdown or what the summer of love, and so they would ask things about that. Well, what are you upset about? Dan Chappell spent 4 hours with Brandon just at his apartment, just trying to find out, get him to talk about anything he was mad at, because Brandon is like a nerd. He was showing him around, showing off his like guns and stuff, and trying to get Dan to hold them, and Dan didn't want to hold them, which should have been a red flag to Brandon. But Dan would be like, well, what do you think about this thing? Or like, what do you think about this governor? And like, Brandon would go on these tirades about like tyrants and his philosophy and anarchism and like his philosophy. He had this notebook where he wrote his philosophy in it. So he was trying to explain like his philosophical viewpoints on like the non-aggression print, like all this dorky stuff. And then Dan's like, well, what about, how would you feel about contact tracers? And Brandon said something like, if someone tries to, jab me, I'd take them out or something. So they take that one little clip of him saying, like, I would do this. And then they just play it out of context at trial to make somebody sound like something completely different from like what they're actually talking about and what's actually happening.
So it's like they're being honeypotted, but instead with like prostitutes or women, it's like male friendship. They're being like, here, have some weed, have some drinks, tell me about your feelings. Oh, you never can talk about your feelings. How do you feel about this? And then
and then recording 4-hour conversations and then using 17-second clips in court and then just pictures of them at these trainings that the FBI set up of them in like their tactical gear with their plate carriers and things like that. So that it's just like you're just scripting a theatrical production, which is literally what they were doing. We've got text messages of the agents when they're arranging the recon of Whitmer's vacation cottage, which is literally the FBI driving people by her cottage. And they had already planned this in advance with her security detail. Her husband was there during the daytime recon. So I just think that's crazy. They had these pull cams installed though at her property, and the agents in these text messages, they're talking to each other and their informants, and they're saying, drive up this way where we have the low light cameras. Like, so they're telling them where to take these guys to get them on camera the best so they can then use that evidence against them at trial and claim that this is something these men did, which is ludicrous.
You know, it'd be kind of like, Chrissy, if you went to an open mic and you befriended all these open micers and then they got you on stage and you didn't realize that your set's being recorded, and then they posted it saying like, look at this bit that's
racist.
Yeah.
Oh, you mean like what people already do? They take a tweet or a joke they hear in a set and be like, F you, transphobe, and then they knock over my merch table.
Yes.
And then they get me banned from various shows in New York City.
Entrapment. So how long were the 5 guys that are now currently in jail, how long were they part of this group of friendship that they thought they had with these FBI agents?
Not long. I mean, the Wolverine Watchman itself was a Facebook page. Like, Joe Morrison created that Facebook page in November of 2019. The FBI, like some of their informants, were already working these guys out, which is interesting because some of the men, like, they didn't know each other. They're from different states, like Barry's in Delaware, Thomas Leaguer's in Wisconsin, Frank Butler's in Virginia. Then you've got the Michigan guys. Then they've got, you know, people, they wanted it to be like a 15-state, multi-state thing, because what they were doing is had one of their informants posing as a national leader of a fake militia group that the FBI made called the Patriot 3%ers. And he's posing as a national leader. And then they had another informant that was the head of the Tennessee chapter. They're just they created Facebook groups, and then they brought these people into it. No, like they hardly knew these, like they had maybe knew each other online, like as a Facebook acquaintance or something. But it's not until March of 2020 when Dan becomes the executive officer and the leader of the Wolverine Watchmen, and then Robeson starts organizing these fake Patriot 3%ers, and then they bring them together at these different events. So these guys, number one, didn't really know each other. They were acquaintances online until the FBI organized meetings and FTXs and then brought them together.
Yeah, because men are terrible at making plans. Like,
you know
that's
what?
so true.
Chrissy, that's like if you were part of the FBI and Simcast was just a ruse to put us all in jail somehow.
I would be such a good Fed. They'd be like, look, we're going to pay you X amount. Just pretend to be a dumb comedian that's just sort of dabbles in political issues.
Yeah.
Yeah. You're under arrest, Lila. No.
Wait, so these 5 guys that are now in jail, they did not know each other apart from being friends on Facebook?
So most of them, right? Like, so the Wolverine Watchman, like I said, was created in November 2019, started as a Facebook page. So that's where the first guys in Michigan, Paul Beller, Pete Musico, Joe Morrison, get together. And the Wolverine Watchman is sort of like a prepping group. So they would all hang out at Pete Musico's property. This is in Jackson County, Michigan. So it's out in sort of like a rural area. And so what they would do is get drunk and like literally roll around on the ground, like playing with their guns and like shooting targets in the backyard. So you had a group of guys that are not like tactically trained. They don't have that kind of experience. They're just like rolling around in the dirt in the backyard until March of 2020, when the FBI sends in Dan Chappell, their informant, he is an Iraq war veteran, and he does have tactical training. He takes over the group and starts hosting these training exercises. That's where they bring in the guys from out of state. Because at that point, like Adam Fox, he's not part of the Wolverine Watchmen group. He only gets dragged into this because Dan Chappell goes with the Watchmen to that Lansing rally, the anti-lockdown pro-2A rallies, and Adam happens to be there. I think it's at that point Dan notices Adam, or Adam gets on the FBI's radar, and they say bring him to the Dublin meeting. So it's in June then at one of these events where he finally meets Barry Croft. So Adam and Barry had known each other from like Facebook, but Barry separately on the other side of this had his own network of informants working him since 2019. There's messages between Roby, the pedo informant, and Barry, and this is before the FBI even claims he was a source. They claim he wasn't made an informant until October of 2019, but there's these messages where Steve is Facebook messaging Barry, and he's talking about, because Barry, for people who don't know, he will say crazy stuff, but he's literally harmless, and he's just a dad. But Barry was known for somebody that would pop off at the mouth. So Steve was suggesting things to him, Steve brings up governors, Steve brings up politicians, and then Barry, as soon as Steve would say it, would just start, oh yeah, those are the bad guys. We need to get them, like Boomer Barry. And
who knows?
Feel
Maybe he
so
was saying
bad
that
for
to
him.
make friends.
He thought exactly. And Barry would say all kinds of goofy stuff. He told people at one point during this, when he was stoned, that he had used his truck to drive Secret Service members off the drive Secret Service details off the road, and that he'd done all these things that obviously he hadn't done.
Resume. Yeah.
Yeah. But then the FBI used that to say he could have used his truck as a battering ram. Wow. And it's like, what? And then they admitted that they planted evidence on him so they could seize it later when they arrested him. It's just so, it gets worse and worse. The more
it sucks. It's hard enough for men, adult men, to make and keep friends, in general. This accomplishes two things. It entraps people, that maybe just want to make friends, or maybe people are not as smart or don't see the signs or a little too trusting. And the second thing it does, it makes people go, well, screw joining any kind of a men's club with any shared interests.
Yeah, just delete your Facebook.
I guess it's just me and my stupid wife again. That's frustrating.
Yeah, it's really sad. And then now we look at, they're putting forward bills like the Preventing Private Paramilitary Activity Act of 2024, which is criminalizing militias anyways. Jesus. So they got what they wanted. I mean, calling the Watchmen a gang and then getting away with that and charging them as a gang. The FBI said in this case that 5 or more people with similar goals and ideals is a gang now. So if you have a family with 5 people, I guess you all have similar goals and beliefs. You could now be a gang, and you could now be prosecuted by the JTTF, I guess. This is just ridiculous.
This is so sad. It's who wouldn't be enticed by free booze, free marijuana,
oh my God, right?
Shooting guns,
friendship.
Yeah, friendship, just shooting the shit, saying, yeah, let's take her and fly her in a kite. Ha ha.
Yeah, Adam said at one point they wanted to hogtie her and all stand around the table and pose like they did the world's biggest drug bust. And they used that to say that just to say that he's it's come on, people say stuff like this, and the way, the context it was said, he was laughing. It was obviously a joke, not an actual operational plan. That's ridiculous. And yet he's in prison.
Wow.
For the last 4 years. Well, he hopefully has some friends there.
Yeah.
You can trade books with them.
To trade books with, yeah. Joe Biden has a small PB. Censorship in America? Surely not. Thank you, sir.
No.
Adam, who won Grifter of the Year? I think
Tucker Carlson.
Oh, Zato, thank you for the orange boy. The sad reality is that dummies fall for this stuff. Don't get set up, folks. I don't know if they're dumb. I
wouldn't call them that.
I don't think that's fair.
Paul is smarter than you think, and half of these people, nothing inappropriate was even talked about around them. Like, they never heard anything about a governor. Like, I've interviewed so many people who attended an FTX or a meeting but weren't charged. They called them unindicted co-conspirators just to prevent them from testifying for the defense. They like threatened future charges over them. But people who were just at these events were like, no, we didn't hear anything about this. So you think that like you're just dumb. No, like they really were preying upon vulnerable people. But think back to the timing too of what was going on in Michigan back then. She had the harshest lockdowns, which she bragged about. She wouldn't let people go to the barber shop. People couldn't buy seeds. They shut down restaurants. People lost like their livelihoods. They couldn't earn money. Of course, they're going to be frustrated. And so calling a meeting and like talking to your friends, venting your frustrations should not be used against you. It's unacceptable. And it doesn't make people dumb. It just means that somebody else preyed upon their vulnerability. What I would say, though, is that people need to understand and recognize that this is not the way things used to be 20 years ago. You have a federal agency that is no longer interested in pursuing what foreign terrorism. You've got former heads of the CIA writing articles together jointly saying that the domestic threat is greater than the foreign threat. They're talking about a domestic war on terror, and they are using these tactics against people. Now, what they were doing for the meetings, these militia groups have always existed. They've always done defensive and medical training. Those are good skills to have. There's nothing wrong with teaching someone how to tie a tourniquet. It's ludicrous to suggest that there is. And I think that, yeah, you should be able to talk crap in the privacy, what you think is the privacy of your property with a group of friends. Yeah, and that's the other thing. Like, they would specifically try to incite, like, so they would try to get them to complain about stuff like Paul. They actually had his girlfriend's restaurant shut down specifically to try, I think, to provoke him. Because if you read how it happened and why, like, it just seemed really strange that it was just her restaurant that had to shut down. So like they would arrange for things to happen to try to get them to like vent about, oh yeah, that governor and her lockdown. I can't believe this.
Wow.
One of them, like Paul, was going to be evicted at one point. So like these people were in desperate situations at times also. And then you have these group of people that are presenting themselves as national leaders in this fake militia group. And they're telling you that, let's do this training. And the other thing about the FTXs is that they were billed as family-friendly events. They had a birthday party at one of these, a little girl's birthday party. They had kids swimming in a pool. They'd cook food. They would provide alcohol and, refreshments. Adam was homeless at the time, living in the basement of the back shack. They would take him out to Buffalo Wild Wings all the time. They would take him, like they would do things that your so-called best friend, like if Adam in the middle of the night needed somebody, Dan Chappell would be right there to come in and be the savior, and that engenders loyalty to these people. And I've got messages of Adam in September where he's telling Dan, the FBI's informant, we should back off of your plan to get the governor, and we should do Ty's bug out plan, because Dan kept telling them, we got to do something before the election because she's going to get a cabinet position. And then this might be her only, like he was really pushing Adam, and Adam is worried about Dan's untreated hernia and telling him he needs to get medical attention. And he's saying, why don't you just put that off until spring? Or why don't we, it's like, you could tell he's not wanting to let Dan down, and he's kind of pretending to go along with it because in his mind, he doesn't believe that it's real. And he thinks that this person is his friend, his father figure. No, it's just like these guys were not dumb people. I mean, they did some dumb things, but everybody does dumb things. If you had somebody following you around for an entire year recording everything you do and say, there's bound to be something stupid in there.
Yeah.
You know?
Absolutely.
Wow. And they were taken advantage of at a particularly vulnerable time for everybody. The
Yeah.
squid said, if anyone takes those jokes seriously, wait until they hear about how me and the boys roast each other.
Oh, no. Well, you know, in Canada, aren't they saying now that in Canada they wanted people to be able to go to jail for life for, quote, hate speech or something?
Yeah. That's getting to be like more of a thing out in Europe and Canada, like where they can really try you for that. Do you know, Christina, if the FBI brought their real kids to these events?
I do know that there were kids. So one of the events that occurred during this was what they called the Dublin meeting. This was a meeting organized by the informant Robeson. He got a conference room there at the Drury Inn Hotel in Columbus, Ohio. They still called it the Dublin meeting because it's technically the Dublin Drury Inn. But the government claimed Barry organized that meeting. He did not. That meeting was arranged for essentially the FBI informants and then all targets of the FBI. So they were bringing people together from different states under the auspices of like a national militia meeting. And it's weird because we know that the FBI had a team of agents there monitoring. And one of the guys said there was someone that he thought was a cop down at the pool with a kid. And he asked, like, did they bring their own kid to this? Was that person like one of the cops? Because they basically commandeered the hotel. Like it was a meeting of mob bosses or something, which is just so stupid. If you know anything about like goofball Barry or Adam, like all of this for them, really millions of dollars, you know, like it's just crazy. So who knows? Who knows if they brought their real kids to these events? But some of the informants did. Like Robeson had his kids at the Cambria event, I believe. Robeson would lead people in prayer. He would tell people to call him Uncle Steve. He wanted to be around people's kids, and they didn't know he was a child predator because the FBI hid his criminal record from people. Yeah, so you couldn't run a background check. If you ran a background check on him, I mean, he would clear.
Lance has a good point. It's like the FBI's Big Brother program.
Yeah. Yep.
Oh my gosh. Wow. Christina, you're so extremely thorough. And I've been seeing so many comments in the chat just about just the work you're doing. And if only all of our journalists could be this caring, this thorough, this bright. Is there anything else that you think people should know about this case that we haven't covered yet?
No, I don't think so. I mean, you guys get the idea. I think at this point, 5 of these guys have been acquitted by 2 different juries. We know that. The other 5 are appealing. I just ask people to pray for those guys. Them and their families, they've got a really hard time right now, and it's an uphill battle. So we need to pray that Adam and Barry, that the 6th Circuit takes up their appeal. Hopefully they will, and then we just have to keep the pressure on them. I mean, part of what I do is keeping the case in people's minds, because one of the issues we have is like this 10-second memory that people now have the attention span of like a fly. So something that happened back in 2020, most people, they don't care anymore. They move on, other things happen. But we can't let people forget about these guys, and we can't let their convictions stand, because that precedent, make no mistake, they're planning to use it against other people. It has to be undone. They cannot be allowed to target people, to entrap them, to bring them together, to create these events the way that they did. What they did was so disgusting. It just can't be allowed to stand. So I would just, encourage people to pray for them. If you can write to them, reach out to me. I'll give you their address. I'll instruct you what to do, how to write to them if you want. It always helps them to get an encouraging letter. You don't have to mention their case, but just, encouraging words. They love hearing about scripture and things like that. That helps them. Just let them know that people haven't forgotten about them. And I know that helps their families too. And just, if you don't mind, follow the Twitter account for the documentary in case they try to take it down again quietly like they did last time. We can't let that happen either, or to other filmmakers for that matter in their documentary films. That's unacceptable also. So also please subscribe to the YouTube channel for the documentary. It's K&K Film Official on YouTube. It's at K&K Film on Twitter, or X as they call it now. So if you go follow that, it's very suppressed everywhere. It's still very shadow banned. So just make sure that you follow that, and then bookmark the website, knkfilm.com. You'll get updates from us as we have more information as we go through post-production here. So we'll also have a updated trailer coming out soon, because that initial trailer, we did that after we'd only interviewed one person, and we had to use that to show people what we could do to fundraise, to go out and interview all these different people in these different states. And so there's so much more that you don't know, like, that has gone on, and so much work we've done. We want to do an updated trailer just to show people, give them an idea before we release it of what we've been working on. So look out for that.
Okay, great. So yeah, pray for these guys. You can send them letters. Maybe, God, it's like, can people donate to their commissary? Is that a thing that can happen?
Yes. And I can give you their inmate number so you can do that if you would like to do that. Somebody did it for Adam recently. I know he wanted to thank them. Someone gave him $100 because another thing that they're doing is they make them pay restitution for the FBI's fake hoax. So they take money out of their commissary every month when their families are trying to help them. And again, this is actually a tax on their families. They're essentially shifting that financial burden to the families, which is inappropriate. Why are these families being financially responsible for restitution for what? Exactly. Nothing happened. Nobody was kidnapped. Nobody got hurt. What are we paying money for? For your hoax that you spent millions of dollars on? I don't think so. One other thing I'd like people to know, I am going to be hosting a Twitter space. I think we're going to do it Thursday. Me and some of the guys that were acquitted. Brandon should be there. He was acquitted after spending 18 months in prison. Some of the unindicted so-called co-conspirators. So they were really targets that the FBI just didn't get enough incriminating things to charge them with. We're going to be going over the release of the 3-hour interrogation of the FBI agents talking to the pedo informant Robeson, where they essentially admit to entrapping these guys, and they say all kinds of crazy stuff. We're going to go over that. We're going to talk about it. You'll get to hear what they have to say about it. Thomas Leaguer was defamed by Roby, and he lied about him in that, so he has something to say on it. So look out for our Twitter space on Thursday.
Awesome. And knkfilm.com. Follow Christina at not Radix, NOTRADIX, and of course the documentary account at KNK Film. And I will put all of the details that you mentioned, like their inmate number and all that, in the description of this episode. Yeah. Wow. Thank you so much, Christina. You are the best. Thank you, Lila, for joining me.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Lila, where can people find you?
LilaHart.com, and subscribe to my YouTube, Lila Hart and Late Night Lila.
I love it. And thank you to everybody in the chat. You guys are actually very well behaved and very good, smart questions this evening.
Yes.
Very proud of you. We will be reading Keanu Thompson's stream. If you just sit tight, the stream will direct right over to her. And we're just going to say, hey, Mickey, you're so fine, all in caps.
Yes.
To keep it fun. All right. Love you guys. We will see you next time. Bye.
Bye.